Han, thank you for joining me again. And for those of you who don't know, who haven't already visited my previous recording with Han, this is Hannah Purslow. She's an HRBP for a global organisation. And in our previous discussion, she very kindly shared with everyone sort of the insights to competency-based interviews. Now, leading on from that interview style sort of brings into the whole sort of hiring process, because we're kind of going to go a step back, if you like. So, Han, from your perspective, obviously, yes, you're working for a global organisation, and obviously all organisations are different, as we know. But from your perspective, what do you, as an organisation, and you personally look for from a general perspective when you are hiring, be that from sort of the first instance of the CV coming in through to the interview process on a general basis? And then if we can we sort of look at that more specifically in terms of how that impacts at sort of the different levels that you recruit at, be it sort of entry level through to sort of director level?
Yeah, of course. So thanks for having me back again. It's always nice to be invited back. So I guess when we think about initially receiving candidate CVs and the sort of things we look for from that perspective, I think main pointers are be precise on it, be quite to the point, but also it is the initial thing that we see from a candidate. So it's almost like a bit of a way to sell yourself. I would always say to have sort of key responsibilities that you've had throughout job roles potentially at the start, just so we can get an idea for what you've really been involved in. And maybe if you don't have a whole wealth of experience, maybe if you're coming straight from college or university, it's more things that you've been involved in within the curriculum or outside the curriculum, and how you sort of got involved in things, and a little bit about yourself in the personal statement, but have those key responsibilities on there as kind of like a jump out point of things that this is what I've done, these are things I've achieved, and this is where I'm at now, and maybe a little bit about what you're looking for as well, because that can always help too.
Do you like to see what they can bring to you as an organisation as well? Because often I think over the years that I've been in recruitment, I suppose things have changed along the way, but all too often there's sort of the questions that people think of to bring to interview with them are, oh, what are the holidays? What are the salary? And all the things that are going to benefit them. Whereas from my perspective these days, when employers are recruiting, you tend to want to see what they can bring to you and how their ability skills are going to enhance the organisation they're going to work for. So effectively selling yourself in, but with what you can bring to the organisation, as opposed to what you can reap from them.
And I guess on a CV, sometimes you get them with cover letters, sometimes you don't, and I don't think it's always the be all and end all if you send a cover letter or not. I think depending on different positions that can come in at different times, but I would say to almost, when you're applying for roles, to tailor your CV a little bit for that role you're applying for. So do a bit of research on the organisation you're looking to apply to, and get a bit of that in your CV if you can. So if you're thinking of joining an organisation like ourselves, get yourself online, do a bit of research about who we are, what we do, where we're based, and think about maybe things you've done that you can draw in to say, oh, actually, I can highlight against that, and I should put a little bit about that on my CV kind of thing. So I would say research is key, because you can almost always get a feel when somebody comes in and they've not looked at all at what your company does.
Yes, no, exactly. Exactly. And I know from recruiting for how much information I will pass on, and it is the same information every time. However, when you can't do it all for someone, but if they haven't taken that on board,
absolutely,
it's obvious, isn't it? It's and it is so much easier. I mean, if I go back 33 years, we used to guide people to the library and say, go and do some research in the library, whereas now all you've got to do is open up the phone and go
all at your fingertips,
look into that company.
And I think that's the thing, because it feels like these days there's almost no excuse to not do that little bit of research, like you say, whether it's a quick Google search or a bit more of a deep dive. Just having those shout out bits of information about the company that you can pinpoint, it just shows a lot to the people interviewing you that, you are keen, you've taken the time to have a look at what we do. And just put your best foot forward, really, going about it in that way, I would say.
Absolutely. It's as you say, it's making your CV more specific to that particular role by picking up on certain aspects that are going to, you can weave that in. And it's about, from your perspective, as I understand, and again, this is potentially true for a lot of employers, you want to know that that person has applied to you for that role to work within your company because they want to work for you specifically. I mean, we're under no illusion if somebody's looking for a job that they are going to be applying for more than just one job at a time.
Yeah, of course.
However,
and you expect that.
Yeah, but you want to know that somebody's taken that time and effort and energy to do that bit more research, not just throw so many CVs out there and hope one sticks.
Yeah, exactly. And they are the little things I think you remember about candidates, the ones who come through and almost tell you a bit about your company, or key things that, you know, are easy to find online or from a bit of research, but the fact that they've brought that with them, or maybe they ask a question around some figures that have been published or something like that, and you're like, oh, this is good, so that you can see that key interest there, and it's not just a case of being, this is a job because I need it for these reasons, which absolutely you do get those employees who come through, and you know that businesses need them as well ultimately when you've got priorities. But yeah, at the same time, for those who come through and they're looking for longevity and a career with the organization and professional and personal development, you do want to see those side of things and those questions being asked a bit more to you as well. So because I always think with the interviews, it goes both ways. Yes, it's the time for the employer to get to know you and what you have to offer and what you can bring to the organisation, but it's also the time for you to ask questions and delve a little bit deeper and think, well, is this organisation right for me? Have I got key questions I want to ask? Because from looking on the outside in, when you do your research, you are always going to see the big positive things and the good things that are happening maybe from an organisation perspective, but again, depending on what role you're coming in at and what you're applying for, it is always good to ask those questions to the employer. And like you mentioned initially, maybe not necessarily around the annual leave and the benefits, which is absolutely important and good to ask. Gosh, you know, you want to know that information, but maybe a little bit more around the business itself and the functions.
Yeah, not being your number one question. How much money are you going to pay me? And are you going to pay me to relocate? And are you going to put my family up in a hotel?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it can be different on the route you come through. Like, you know, Sarah, if you've got candidates coming through an agency like yourself, you normally give them that information up front and it's provided, and we're aware of that as interviewers, that we know they've had, you know, a bit of prep about who we are and what we do and that sort of thing. But especially when people are coming through directly and you're applying, you know, directly to the organisation, sending in your CV, maybe not necessarily against a role, but just because you want to put your foot forward and say, if you get anything that comes up, this is me, it's definitely worth pinpointing the things on your CV where you can make a connection to the organisation, and doing that research and asking relevant questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's building that rapport.
Without
absolutely. Even having that conversation in the very first instance with that CV.
Definitely.
Yeah. And as you said, so when it comes to that interview stage, again, it's that prep, it's having those questions lined up, it's having that knowledge and sort of demonstrating that enthusiasm that you are interested because you've done that research, and therefore, because you have done that research, that's brought up questions in your mind, because ultimately it is a two-way street. You are interviewing the organisation to see if you want to work there as much as they are interviewing you, which is really important. But I guess, I mean, that we've spoken very sort of generalistically over sort of the CV process, and we've not dug in really deep, but this is kind of a general overview of the sort of the CV and the sort of the interview process. But obviously, when you're interviewing and recruiting at different levels, I'm guessing, as I sort of alluded to before, you look for different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I think, you know, our entry level roles, people coming in, they might not necessarily have a wealth of experience, but I think if they can, again, outline on a CV the job roles they have done, make it clear and concise, the information you're providing. If you haven't got a lot of experience, I'd say don't oversell yourself, because then the expectations of the interviewer are going to be a lot higher. But be honest, and, you know, if you don't have a lot of experience, then that initial key responsibilities you've had throughout education, maybe things like that, or things in your personal life you've been involved in, pinpoint those on there and put a little bit about how you can connect yourself to the organisation. When we think of more senior roles and sort of moving up, maybe like people leader, those sort of positions and senior management roles, you do expect to see that a little bit more. So clearly in terms of, what they've done, what they can bring to this organization. So from a senior management position, you'd be expecting to see those real key achievements that they've met at other businesses. You might expect more of a cover letter to come through explaining why they are keen to join your organization, and things like that, and things around, how they've worked through their career and the businesses they've been at, potentially what those businesses do, because in more senior positions, sector can play a role in it. If you've been in a certain sector for quite a long time and you're looking to make a switch, let us know why, so we can piece that together and support you. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you've got gaps on CVs or it doesn't make sense, you need that part of the story, don't you? Knit it all together, because I think over the years, I think there was a period where people used, there is a phrase for it, the CVs that haven't got the sort of the dates of employment or anything like that, and all it's got is the sort of the expertise. Yeah. And personally, I find those really frustrating, because you can't see, well, where? What? Exactly. How does this fit in? It's like being given a jigsaw puzzle, but only being given sort of the colours but no shapes or something like that, and you can't fit it all together.
And I think sometimes, as an employee, you receive those sort of CVs, maybe where there has been a gap in employment, or you can't see those dates, and you do think, okay, well, what's happened here? And that's not always a negative start, but I think to help the employer and to help the person reading your CV and those hiring managers to give a little bit of background information on that, maybe in the form of a cover letter or maybe on the CV, it's really, really good. And I think, we're all human at the end of the day. Everyone's been through different things in their lives and different outcomes and different opportunities, and just talk through that and just sort of say, this is where I'm at now. Yeah, I've had this in the past, but this is what I'm looking for, and be honest and open, because what you don't want, I think, like we spoke previously, is then for you to join the organization, maybe it's a bit of a sink or swim, or maybe the organization isn't enough for what you want. So the more clear you can be on your CV in terms of what you're looking for, where you've been, has there been gaps, a brief information on why, it will help the organisation and it will help yourself to be paired to the right organisation when you are applying, I think.
Absolutely. That's exactly what, I sort of try and convey at any sort of given moment in all that I do, because it's so important. It's about connecting with yourself, who you are, what you want to do, getting that message across through your CV. Your CV represents you, and obviously
definitely.
Once you've got your CV through the door and being invited in for an interview, then you are representing you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about being true to yourself, because otherwise, like you said, you end up being a round peg in a square.
We'll get there.
One of those.
I know what you mean. No, I know what
the job changes happen. So
absolutely.
Take time and get the right role. Go the wrong one, and this is at all levels. So obviously you've got that CV through, and then just to sort of go into that interview process again, generalistically but a bit more specifically, if that makes sense. So from a sort of an entry level role, it tends to be a less intensive interview process to the senior level roles. And what would you be expecting at that level when people, apart from obviously the research and the questions and things like that?
Yeah.
Where does the difference lie in what an expectation would be and what people would need to think about?
I think, a few things come into play. So if you think on entry level roles, more often than not, you're looking at a 2-stage max. One will be a phone screening. So you'll have had that initial conversation anyway. You'll get a feel for the person that's going to interview you. This is how we kind of work it anyway. And then you'll have, in a normal world, face-to-face, probably in this world, 2020, a virtual sort of face-to-face interview. And it's just about being professional. Having that professional appearance. I mean, even in our organisation, as you know, we are very casual in terms of how we present ourselves because of the nature of our business, but you would expect people to reflect that, and they should be able to, no matter at what level, by having that understanding of what we do. So when they turn up to the interview, from a organisation fit, you can get that feel for them in terms of how they present themselves, for one. Again, I think depending on the seniority of the role, it can depend on, people are always nervous at interviews, right? But if you've got someone coming straight out of college or university who maybe doesn't have too much interview experience, from based on their CV, we'd like to think we'd know that. So then you can tailor it in a slightly different way in regards to how you ask the questions. But I think, like we spoke about on our last session, Sarah, when it comes to the questions and sort of what we expect, it's about the candidate preparing, regardless of the role. Just prepare yourself. That's the best thing I can advise you to do, generally, without going too off beat on it.
No, absolutely. Preparation is absolutely key.
Yeah.
Down to that, creating the right impression, that first impression, and that comes down initially to that, as you say, to that appearance. And you can get and I did another interview with a personal stylist that I've put onto the YouTube channel as well, amongst others. And you can do that research. You can find out what the organisation tends to, whether it's a suited and booted, whether it's more casual, like you are, because you will have a better impression of that person being themselves in the clothes that they wear, obviously still making that effort in that casual, smart casual attire. But if you had somebody that was looking like they just walked out of Savile Row, you might think, from a subconscious level, are they going to fit into our culture, because they're suited and booted with crisp iron whereas you're more of a casual jeans, t-shirts, sort of sneaker kind of.
And again, like we said before, just ask the question. So before you go to your interview, ask, what's the sort of dress code? Is it a suit and tie sort of environment, or am I not needed that? And it's always best too, because then and there's sort of no hidden surprises for you, or the employer in a sense, because if we've given you that information, we expect that you've taken note and you'll turn up and be like, okay, he understood where we're at here. So definitely, I think ask the question, and just be prepared to present yourself in a professional way, and clear communication, I would say. Just be as clear as you can when you are answering your questions. And if you're not sure on questions, just ask. It might be that the way it's worded might be slightly different to the way you perceive it. So ask if it can maybe be asked in a different way if you're not sure, especially when we talk about our entry-level sort of language roles, I'd say. When we look more senior, obviously then your recruitment and interview process, it can be slightly different. So it might be that it's maybe a 3-stage interview with different stakeholders within the business and different management levels within the business to really get an understanding for the area that you're looking to go into, and if you are the right person for that, based on past experience, achievements in other organizations, and that sort of thing.
So certainly you go into more things more specifically, or more specific. We won't go down that road.
I know exactly what you mean. But definitely, I think entry level, you might have some initial recruitment tests to complete on the day of the interview, and maybe more senior, you might get pre-interview assessments that they need you to complete. So maybe there's a task they want you to do beforehand, or maybe they want to give you a presentation brief, and a time frame to present on during the interview. And that checks a few things. It checks your understanding of the role. It checks what you think you'll bring to the business. It also checks the timeliness if you're given a time frame. So there's a number of things that the recruiter and interviewing team will be looking for when they set you those tasks and invite you to an interview.
Sure. So it's not just the result per se that you are looking for in that case. It
can be a number of things that tie into it. So you might have somebody who absolutely smashes the test, is brilliant maybe on a phone screen, but is maybe not so confident in the face-to-face aspect or clear at communicating in that. Then you can kind of pinpoint, okay, well, this was a real strength, this is a weakness. Is the weakness, an issue, or can we develop and support on that? And then the interview team can go away and think about those things when they're sort of scoring after interviews and looking to offer the right candidate.
And I guess it always depends upon what the market is delivering as well. Because
definitely.
A lot of changes, and we're not touching on it in any depth right now, but as you've already alluded to, you do recruit language roles, and obviously we've got Brexit and the impact and all the things. I think that's a topic for another.
I was going to say, I think we could do a whole other session on that.
YouTube altogether. Recruiting bilingual in 2021. Another story. It just, again, as we did on the competency-based interviews, it's all about that preparation, isn't it?
Preparation's key.
From a generalistic perspective, its preparation is key, and the more senior the role becomes, the more detailed and the more involved it becomes. It's becomes more specific because of the nature and the qualities that you actually
absolutely
role. And it's about that person demonstrating that ability at an interview, and their previous experiences. And as you say, it's asking questions. If you're not clear, ask those questions.
Yeah.
It's and also I think we've not mentioned it, but I guess that comes and is part of that process, and asking the right questions. Enthusiasm and interest and desire.
Definitely.
And that energy that somebody can portray.
Definitely, because I think there's nothing worse than leaving an interview and feeling like, oh, I should have said that, or I should have asked this. Just do it. So at least then it shows the interviewer your interest and enthusiasm, and how much more you want to understand if there is a gap in your understanding about the organisation. And also for yourself, you can kind of like to think you can go out with your head held high and say, yeah, I really put my best foot forward. I'm not coming away thinking, oh, should I have done this or should I have done that? Because of course you can get in touch with the organisation after your interview, but that initial impression's already been set. So they will be thinking, why didn't you ask that at the time? And okay, things might come up when you're in the when you've left the interview that you think, damn, I should have asked that. And that's okay, and you can kind of put it forward in that way. But I would say if you sat there thinking and you've got a question, or you feel maybe you've not answered one of the interviewer's questions in the right way, ask to go back to it, or say, oh, just on that one, can I just get some clarity around what you were asking for there? Something like that. I think it will help you. And I think it will build confidence for future interviews as well, to feel like, actually, yeah, I can go in there and I can ask questions as well. And, I can feel comfortable doing that.
Absolutely. There's always something to be learned. And I always think, and I always say, if you aren't offered that specific job, there's a reason behind it. For whatever reason, it wasn't part of your path, it wasn't part of your journey. You weren't supposed to go there, and it may be that you never knew why. But it's about taking the learning, the knowledge, the experience, and taking that to another interview, another organisation,
absolutely,
using that at that particular point.
Yeah, and I very much believe the same, Sarah. Like, everything happens for a reason. So don't beat yourself up about it. Take yourself away. Think, what could you do differently? What could you do better next time? And then just go at it again.
Exactly. Just sort of let it go, and that was yesterday, and here's to it. But hopefully the decision is here's the job offer, and you go whoopie-doo.
Exactly.
And as we've already sort of prior to recording this suggested, it would be really good to talk to you again, not now, because obviously I think we've concluded all of what we wanted to talk about, but to discuss that onboarding process, and what your expectations are as an employer for somebody as they come on board, they join the organisation, whether that sort of waiting on the notice period through to sort of coming in and getting started, because that would be a really insightful
sort of like initial employee journey sort of thing.
Absolutely. But thank you ever so much again for sharing your valuable insight from an employer's perspective, because from a recruiter's perspective, obviously I can impart stories and journeys from working with lots of different organisations, but I've not really been in the other side of the seat.
No, I know.
To hear it from from an employer's perspective, from an HR perspective, especially the scenario you're in, which is working for a global organisation, where there's so much that's coming into you from sort of Europe and from the US, and working then locally with information as well, and obviously thing in the UK. So
definitely. And I hope the viewers find it useful, because that's what we're doing it for. And your content and your channel, Sarah, it's brilliant, so it is all there to help people, so they should definitely check out your videos.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's absolutely great. So right, well, we will get on and record another.
We will. Thanks, Sarah, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks.